Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. We're going to get into an episode that we have had really, really good feedback about. We started a new series a little while ago that was doing case studies of my clients. And these are all anonymous, by the way. So we never release any personal identification, any personal information. But the number one question that I get is like, tell me how you get these clients, the results that you get them. And we've had clients who've hit massive milestones, everywhere between, 2x to 10x to 12x their business in their time of working with us from, 6 months to a year to 2 years in time. And so the common question that I get is like, literally, how did you do that? And so without being able to give away everyone's information, I was like, well, I can't really say about Sarah's results or whoever's results because I don't really want to tell their story. And so we never really talk about our clients unless they are somebody who chooses to want to be in our marketing. And you guys know my thoughts on this, right? Like, I don't want to use my clients as a leverage point for my own business. And so I actually chatted with one of my clients about this. And I had said, yeah, people always ask about the results that we share with you. And she's like, well, have you ever thought about maybe sharing it, but just doing it anonymously? And I was like, I kind of love that idea. And she's like, yeah, you can break down all the pieces of the strategy, but you just don't know whose strategy it was. You just talk about the business type, where they started, what we did with them, where they ended up. And I'm like, I love it. And so we did an initial episode around this, a case study episode of a course creator that we worked with. And when I tell you that episode completely took off, I think I have to triple check, but I'm pretty sure it's like one of our top performing episodes right now. And that is because everyone's like, finally, not only are we seeing the results, obviously, that are possible, like we want to know how we can hit these milestones in business, but there's also this aspect of the how did you do it? Like, not just what the outcome was, but also how did you get there? And most importantly, like, where did they start? Because even for me, when I've looked at reviews or testimonials or results of people, I'm like, okay, well, that's great to say that you achieved that. But I'm also very curious, where did that person start? I.e., did they already have a 7-figure business and then you kind of helped them to get from 1 million to 1.2 kind of thing? Or is them getting to 1.2 them starting at 6 figures? Like, what is the growth that we're looking at? And context is really important, right? Because if you're looking at someone's results, you want to know the context of what following do they have? How long have they been in business? Do they have a team? Are they solo? Like, all of these are questions we have, right? When we see social proof online. And so I'm like, let's pull back the curtain. And today I'm really excited about today's case study because she's an absolute complete genius when it comes to everything marketing and sales. And I want to break down a little bit of the lessons, the learnings. There's been so many insights from this individual's business that I think are going to be really valuable for you to learn from and that I really am excited to share with you. So I want to give you a little bit of an initial when she came to me, where she was at. And we do this for every episode, by the way. We're always going to give you the starting point of when she started coaching, where was she at, and what was kind of her starting point. So she has been someone in the social media space for a while now. She started in the social media space at around the age of 22 and had actually been in the business world prior to that in other endeavors, and really had been in the online world, though, serving in the social area online at the age of 22. She also had previously been inside of a social media management company, and during the midst of COVID had her hours slashed, and therefore as a result had a lot of her income associated with those hours also slashed. And so when she was in social media management, she was like, okay, well, I can take this and I can run with this. Like, I know this inside and out. And so let's take this and let's run with it. And so when she came to me, she was already making, I would say, about 5 figures a month. I believe she was at the place, and we checked in all of our files because we've been working together for a while now. She was probably averaging, I would say, consistently around 30K or so a month. And so I remember when she came to me, we had our consult. And, there was actually an interesting part of this consult that I wanted to share with you because she's a private client of mine. And when she came to work with me, we had done a consult. We did a sales call, if you will. I call them consults, but a sales call technically. And when we did this sales call, it was interesting because she, was looking to make an investment, and she was really in a place and in a mindset, which I very much appreciate, because she wasn't in a place where her business wasn't working. And I think that this is it's such a testament to her perspective around business and her perspective, frankly, around growth. Like, it's not like she had fires left, right, and center. It's not like there was this massive, if I don't change something, the whole thing's going to burn to the ground. and she told me this fully. She was like, I fully considered just like riding solo, like really just me, myself, taking the knowledge and the experience I had in business. She had some great business coaches before myself. So I can't take credit for any of that growth of that foundational work. And I know some of the coaches she's worked with, they're incredible coaches. But she had come to me and she said, listen, like I'm really considering whether I do this on my own or do I need a consultant in my corner? And I think that word of need is really interesting, right? Because, I had said to her, listen, like you don't have to work with me because you can't survive without me. It's more a matter of the fact of depending on where you want to go, do you have the insight and the vision and the steps to get there? And can I support you in some way with that? That's really what the conversation came down to. And so I remember we got on the consult and she was like, I want to be really transparent with you. Like I am kind of price shopping, if you will, for different prices in business coaches. I'm like, absolutely. And it was interesting because the other person that she had inquired with, I remember her telling me the person would not get on the phone with her. And like, we're talking like big money. Like we're talking the investment into a car, to give it context. And that was so interesting to me because it made me really realize the experience that a lot of people have when they go into purchasing in the online world. And I think that we get this aspect of ego that ends up happening in sales, right? We have this belief that, when we get to a certain level, like the number one thing that I hear of high ego people is don't waste my time. And I think that that's so interesting. I understand having leverage to your time. And I understand being intentional and being thoughtful about how you spend your time. But I also believe that regardless of what stage you're at in business, check your ego at the door. Because if someone is going to make an investment with you of the equivalent of a car, the least you could do is answer a couple questions for them about the investment that they're making. And so she literally told me candidly, she's like, truthfully, I was looking between the two of you. And the fact that we were able to have that phone call and talk about my business, and like I was able to really get your thoughts on what we were going to do together. And it wasn't this whole like, hey, like once you get inside, like then we'll talk about it. She's like, that was a sell factor for me. Like that was a big selling feature of you being able to really be open to giving me strategy and giving me insight of what you're going to do for me. And so on that call, I will give you guys a little bit of a 101 of how this works, by the way, if you were to get on a call with me. My calls, by the way, my quote unquote, the reason I call them consults is because they're not really selling to me. I'm just like, hey, let me serve the crap out of you for the next hour. And if you like the ideas I have, great. I can tell you about ways to work with me. And if you don't, then you understand a little bit of the 101 of what I see for your business. And like, beautiful. That's it. We go our separate ways. And so we were on this call and she was like, here's where I'm at. And so where she was at the time, like she had an agency that she was running. She had a couple girls that were working for her at that time. She was on, a couple different platforms, marketing herself, and was really like, I just want to know what it takes to get to the next level. Like I want to know how to scale this agency. And so I said, listen, like I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm going to pull this apart. And when I was on that sales console, and I have a tendency to do this, not intentionally, but I'm just like, listen, here's the real honest truth of what I see for you. I think we need to change this. And I start going off about, if I was you, I would restructure this and I would put this way. And the sales process, I would do this, and marketing, I would do this. Because again, as I said, like this is just a way for me on these consults to just give people value. And I remember her being like, okay. And we've talked about it afterwards because we've been working together a while now. And we're very chummy and connected and friends now. But we talked back on it. And she was like, that call made me realize that even though I thought I was going to do it on my own, I realized that like there were so many things that you pointed out that I had been thinking about and I'd been considering, but it was validating for me in those ideas and in those concepts. And so because of that, it was like, okay, yeah, like let's do this. And again, I think the mindset of not because her business was broken or that she couldn't survive without me, more a matter of the fact that she was like, I could have a consultant and like a partner in crime, if you will, in my corner helping me with the strategy. So like, why wouldn't I do that? And so she jumped. And so she joined into private coaching. And so I really want to kind of give you a little bit of like the high level of what we were able to do together. And I want to then also go into the strategy of exactly how we were able to do that. So a little bit of high level of the results. She was able to create a multi-million-dollar company by the age of 25. Okay. Can we just take this in? By the age of 25, she was able to create a multi-million-dollar company. She, in one of the years working together, we had hit 100K sales months. And by the end of that same year, we're at 280K sales months. And also in this process was able to build out multiple different avenues of her product suite, was able to manage both having an agency and a consulting firm, and is now building out a passive side to the business, has a team of incredible women, and has been making massive impact on every platform and with her brand and the mission that she stands for. And so I really want to break down the things we worked on and how we were able to do this, because there's a lot of milestones in this process that I think were really the reason she's been able to get to where she is. Because again, remember, for context, like when we started together, she was kind of fluctuating at 5-figure months and now has multiple 6-figure months happening. And so the way in which we were able to do that. So as I said, when she came to me, she was in the social media space and had a marketing agency. And the agency was doing super well. Like I had said to her, and I still to this day attest to this, she was able to sell high ticket luxury marketing support and called in very high level clients into this offer. And so because of that, I said to her, like, you really do have something different here. And again, there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, but we're not talking about like a standard social package of like a 2K a month type of situation. Like we were talking high price points into like the 8K a month, 10K a month retainer packages for these marketing clients. And so it was really very telling to me that when she had come to me, there was obviously a difference factor here when it came to the marketing and when it came to the brand, which makes sense because she's so smart when it comes to the marketing side of things. And so when she first came to me, one of the first things that we did is we really looked at the agency structure. And actually, kind of in prepping for today's episode, I went back through our kickoffs, because if you're a private client of mine, by the way, you get like these intensive days, which is basically you plus your team members, where we deep dive into your strategy every 6 months. And it's kind of like our reset button, if you will. And I went back to our first VIP day recording and I started to kind of go through our discussion points. And, when it came to the agency at that time, the team structure was one of the big things that we really made an adjustment with. It was the team and the way that the team was operating, but most importantly, like the processes and the platforms and the systems around the things that were supporting the team. And so with the team, one of the big structures that we changed was who was basically responsible for what, and also who communicated with who. One of the things that we tried to create the most of was trying to look at like who was the primary and who was the secondary. So in any role, that there would be basically a backup plan should somebody for whatever reason be sick, on vacation, or for whatever reason end up leaving the company. We had some aspect of security in that position. And so when it came to the team, one of the things we did is we really restructured who was in what place and what intention did they have. Before this, the team really was focused quite a bit. There was a couple positions that were very outcome focused already, but there was quite a few that were very much around tasks, in a sense of like who's doing what task. And instead, what we did is we really looked at the team structure and said, okay, well, of these people, what are the outcomes that they're responsible for? I.e., like what are the departments, what are the sections of the business that they then are responsible for and own? Because otherwise, what was happening is there was a lot of people on the team in the agency. But then what ended up happening was she was kind of like the task manager, right? The CEO ended up becoming the person who was overseeing quite a bit of this. And so then even though she has these people and you're thinking, okay, like I have people on my team and I'm delegating to people, she still felt like she was in it so much because she was still connected to the ownership of ensuring that it happened and that things progressed in the way that they needed to. And so that was really because the team at the time was not structured around an outcome-based structure. So it was the same amount of team members. Like it wasn't really a matter of adding more people. It was just more a matter of the aspect of like, how do we leverage the people that we have in the existing structure right now and just do it a little bit differently. And it was really helpful actually having her team on her intensive day, because we really got, and I love this by the way with teams, when you work with teams, you get the real one-on-one of what's going on. Because as a CEO, it's not that you're not looking, it's just that you have a different perspective of it, right? Like when I speak with the CEO, they're talking high level, they're talking visionary, they're talking usually like, either one of two things, in the weeds of where they spend a lot of their time, or they're talking high level about the other departments that they're not in very often. And so the best way to get to the source really, and this is my suggestion for you as well, if you have a team, is to really go and ask your team or get another consultant or someone as a session to go in and work alongside your team and get them to answer the hard-hitting questions of like, how are things working? Like what needs to be developed? What is working? What's not working? How is communication? How are the systems? Do you know where to find what you're responsible for? Do you know how to know if you're doing a good job? Like to really ask the hard-hitting questions that allow you to see what's really happening in the business, because the team is the best way to get a effective, accurate snapshot of what's really, really going on inside of a business at a given moment. And so when I went into the team, that was one of the things that we looked at. We looked at who was responsible for what. We looked at creating more intentional processes, more SOPs, more KPIs, or more intentional team role descriptions as well, as to like who was responsible for what and like what did that look like, what outcome. But one of the biggest changes, and I mean one of the biggest changes that we made to team, which I want to preface doesn't have to be a scary thing, because I know as I say it, you're going to be like, "Ooh." It's a matter of the fact of changing compensation. And we didn't change compensation in the sense of I slashed it or something. I changed compensation in the lens of the way in which people were being compensated. And this is a big, and I mean big, disconnect that I see within service providers and agencies type structures. In an agency, when you have people being paid a flat rate. So for example, let's just say I'm a marketing agency and, or any agency, it could be ops agency, anything, ads agency, it doesn't matter. When you have a team member that's working with you and you're paying that team member, let's go call her, I don't know, Stacy. Stacy on your team is being paid a flat $4,000 or $3,000 or $2,000 a month. The problem with that is when you're at a certain stage of business, you have a fixed overhead for that person. And if you have multiple of those people, it could be to the tune of $10,000 to $20,000 a month. That is fixed and it's not variable, connected to the cost or the revenue of the business. And what I mean by this is there was so many people when I came into the team originally that were flat rate salary, if you will. And they weren't necessarily all full-time employees. There were some contractors or 1099s, I believe they call it in the States. But the people when I came into the team had a lot of flat rate compensation. Like we're talking this person's 2K, that person's 3K, that person's 7K. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is a lot of fixed overhead, which basically means that you have the same amount of expenses regardless of how much business is generated month to month in the company, how much revenue you generate. And so I was like, we need to restructure this. Like I can get the women on your team to the same number right now. Like I'm not going to have to take the person from 7 to 5 or 5 to 2. I don't need to do that. I can still give her 5 or give her 7 if it makes sense. But I also was more looking at how are we getting to 7? How are we getting to, 5? And so, for example, one of the things that we did, we took somebody who had a flat compensation per month, that was a flat salary, and we restructured that. And what we did is we took and we gave that person a base. So let's just call it as an arbitrary number. And these are not their numbers, it's just example numbers. Say we were to have somebody who was originally at 5,000. Well, what I would do is I would give them $1,000 base, right? And then I would say, okay, well, if they're a client manager, let's just say that they're posting for clients or they're doing an aspect of management, design, copy, whatever it might be. We would then give them an additional $500, what we consider to be cost per client, which basically means that the client and the management of that client, they get compensated as one of the people on that person's account, $500 per month per client, which means in turn that as that person has more clients, they will be compensated more because why? The business has generated more revenue. Therefore, the cost can go up associated with that client, i.e., like the more clients the person manages, the more they make, but most importantly, the more that the business has made, which is why that makes sense. Now, on the opposite side, say the business makes less, say the business drops and you lose 3 clients. Well, the problem with agencies is there's this kind of teeter-totter, right? Where they're like, I need staff and I need people there, but then I also need to have the sales that make, or the revenue that makes having those people make sense. And so it always feels like this catch-22 because you're like, I'm always feeling stuck in the middle. I either need more team or I need more sales. And so the thing that we look at typically is trying to create the fluctuation of the team compensation to be directly tied to the company's results. Because the other thing you can also do to give your team more compensation, even in addition to that, is adding things that are incentive based, that are promotional based. So, for example, if someone is an account manager, you can say, if you have a part in getting that client results and that client resigns, we will also give you a client bonus for resign of X amount of dollars of another $500 or $1,000. So you can create structures for your team to win. But the thing is, in some positions, this is not in all positions, by the way, So it really depends on the company. I'm just giving you as an example. But in this situation, there was way too many people on the team that all just had fixed compensation. It was a flat salary, regardless of how many clients they served, regardless of how many, of this, that, or the other. They were all pretty much banking on making the exact same amount of money per month. And again, some roles warrant that. So for example, like say you're like an admin on a team, you're not going to have a cost per client. Like that's not typically going to be normal for someone who's, for example, like your ops person on your team to be paid cost per client. But if you're someone who's an account manager, i.e., you have an influx of more or less clients happening, this is something we have to look at. And so this was one of the adjustments, the major adjustments that we made with team, because what we realized was when we went to the books, which is something I do a lot of with, clients that are scaling, we really look at their numbers. We look at their profit margins, we look at their cost, we look at where the revenue is coming from, where the percentage of the revenue comes from, i.e., new business, referrals, renewals. We're looking at what offers it's coming from, all of these things. And so when we went to the cash flow, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. The business actually had moments that when we went back, it was actually paying people more than it was making, i.e., they were in the negative in some months, even though there was sales. The profit was in the negative in specific months. And it was a very short period of time. But the point is, it was a symptom that told us that the team structure needed to be adjusted. And so when we went in, we were like, okay, like this has to happen quickly and immediately because the business can't afford the float of what the team is requiring because the business sales wise is doing well. There was just too many costs and we had to restructure to see how things were going to work. And so that's what we did. We added and we changed people to be base plus variable in any situation where we felt it was warranted. And so we also really looked at, because this person in building their team had a lot of different people that they had hired, some that they had known and some have had relationships with, and other people who were new to their team. And so the other thing we also looked at was this duality between hiring for the person and hiring for the position. Because there really is this aspect of personality in hiring, right? So, like, what is the persona or the personality of the person we're bringing in and how that adds or complements to the team? And so, we had talked about the fact that, you really can't just hire for personality. And if you do, and you do hire for personality, you have to be cognizant of that because that means that that there's going to be something you have to make up when it comes to the position. But we also realized there were certain people that were good personalities but didn't fit the position. And we had some people who were good for the position but didn't have the personality for the team. And so we really looked at the aspect of like, how can we also introduce team culture in the aspect of giving bumper lanes, giving principles, giving values from which people can operate that allow them to kind of fall in line with the values and the beliefs of the company. And with that you naturally will kind of see who doesn't fit that vision. Because again, we had really been looking at like who can do the job as the main thing when hiring people, instead of what was the culture, what was the perspective, what was the mindset of the people that were in the business, and were they adding to the team culture or were they taking away from it? And so what we really looked at with the team was like, okay, like we're going to take this and we're going to scale the agency. So as we start to go and we start to, really refine the agency systems and the agency packages and the agency marketing, and we start to get into all of it, the conversation comes up of like, is there another way to scale? What if I didn't want to do the agency? And I was like, okay, well, if you don't want to do the agency, let's just put that on the table. If you didn't want to do the agency, what would you want to do? They're like, I think I would really like to do consulting, because the thing that came up for the CEO was the fact that she had said, I really love the strategy side. Like I just nerd out on strategy and could talk about it all day, every day. And I was like, okay, well, then you probably would really enjoy consulting because you're going to be strategizing for people day in, day out. And so I was like, okay, let's put this on the table. And so when we did, one of the first starting places really was to look at, okay, well, do we want to do some one-on-one consulting? Basically dip your toe in the water to see if people are interested in doing just the strategy portion with you, i.e. you wouldn't do their marketing for them. You would just tell them what to do with their marketing and then they would take it and run with it. And so very quickly, the high ticket one-on-one consulting basically sold out, and to this day remains to be sold out because they still have this for a select few clients. And in that, it became very apparent that there were actually quite a few people in their audience who wanted to work with them, but because the agency was so high level, in the sense of like so frankly exclusive, because you really need to be at a certain place in business for it to make sense, there was this section of their community and of their audience that really was wanting to learn from them, but didn't really have a structure or a place to be able to do that, that wasn't having their marketing completed for them. And so we're like, okay, let's introduce one-on-one. So when one-on-one sold out, and we're talking like no price objections, basically, people are just like, yep, sign me up, let's go. It was very validating of the fact to, especially to the CEO, that like, oh yeah, this is where I want to go. Like, this is definitely like what gets me excited. It's something that I love and I want to get into it. I'm like, oh, beautiful. So she says she wants to get into consulting. We start with the one-on-one. It was basically proof of concept to test and put the, bait in the water basically with the audience and see how it did. So, okay, well, how do we scale this even further? Because originally when this client had come to me, we talked obviously, of course, about, the annual vision of like how much she wanted to make that year and all of these things. But one of the things that was also, a larger discussion was like, tell me what the long-term vision of the business is. She was like 5 million a year. Like, no question, 5 million a year. I'm like, okay, great. So I knew where she was going. Like, I always had that North Star because she told me that from day one when we met. And so I always had that North Star in my mind. And I was like, okay, well, how do we get her there as fast as possible in the most intentional way as possible? And so when we started to look at kind of scaling the consulting, and I was okay, well, what do you think about the different pathways, right? We've got passive, we've got intensives, we've got a VIP day kind of equivalent, and we've got masterminds. And so because she was kind of newish to this consulting side underneath her business umbrella, it really ended up being an opportunity for her to taste a bunch of different flavors of what consulting was going to look like. And so she really tasted it all. She put out a couple offers to her audience about VIP days. She put out, intensive offerings, which were like shorter kind of deep dives with her, put out some things that were kind of like more low ticket, more like masterclass type of structure, more low ticket offerings. And so really it came down to is like, she's like, I love to do the high level strategy. And so then came the discussion around creating a mastermind. And so that's just what we did. And so she launches the mastermind and it crushes. And I mean, crushes. Like the sales of this mastermind initially coming out the gate were phenomenal. And so it really started to take momentum because there's people who wanted to work with her, again, as I said, who hadn't been able to. And so like, this is my moment to work with her and to get her strategy. And so in doing so, the mastermind starts filling up. And so the mastermind takes its time and kind of, gets people going into it. And we start to work out the kinks of the back end delivery and, how we want to have it structured and the modules and the onboarding and all the things. And so one of the things that came up though was that originally the mastermind had been all group. And so the group can usually take you to a certain place with a mastermind, right? But they're always in many programs, not all, but many programs, there is this aspect of the complement of one-on-one support that really does take things to the next level because it helps your audience and your clients to be able to integrate that clarity even more intentionally specific to them and their business. And so she said, I feel like we need to integrate one-on-one. Like it works as group, but I feel like it could work even better if we had one-on-one support. And so then came, okay, well, how do we want to scale that? And so what it ended up being is that it really got tied into a rebrand. And so her company had been like the same name basically since day one. Anyways, come to find out, she gets a letter from someone that says, hey, your name is too close to ours, i.e., it falls similar to the umbrella. Not even the name, a phrase within her name was too close. It wasn't even the name of her business. It was a phrase within her name was too close to somebody else's. And when they tried to trademark it, came to realize that it wasn't going to be able to be trademarked because a letter came back and said it's too close to somebody else's, so you won't be able to trademark it. And she was like, crap, because this one person had trademarked all these sub phrases, not only the name of their business, but all the sub phrases associated with it. So there became this kind of like pivotal point, which became, okay, well, do we move forward with this with the potential of the fact that we won't be able to trademark our name? Or do we pick a totally different name and we trademark that? And so it was like, okay, well, why don't we do that? So we go in and we decide that basically this is a good opportunity to rebrand the entire thing because her business had at that point, we could see the evolution happening pretty quickly, right? Like the business was growing rapidly. There was changes happening quickly with team, marketing, which I'll get into in a second. The offerings were developing and we're like, if you're going to change it, now is actually a great time to do it. And we can use the rebrand to create momentum. And sure enough, they did. So the most epic rebrand, by the way, just absolutely incredible rebrand. Powerhouse brand before, an incredible brand now. And so the branding and the rebrand of it was basically the momentum that helped to create a surge around the mastermind and also kind of complemented and echoed to some of the changes that were going to be happening. And so we were able to really integrate the changes we wanted to make underneath this rebrand. So it kind of complemented perfectly. But the rebrand also was a spark for marketing, which I'm going to get into. And so the thing I want to kind of close the loop on with the scalability of this business, when they came, it was all agency. We went from agency to one-on-one. We went from one-on-one, which still now exists in a very limited capacity, to then going one to many with a little bit of one-on-one in it, which is now being facilitated by support coaches inside the program. And so that mastermind is really like the bread and butter, if you will, of the company's revenue now. And the CEO is in it, absolutely. But there are incredible coaches that are inside now that are supporting and facilitating one-on-one with clients. And then became, again, the next level, which is like, how do we scale even further? And so the interesting thing about the offer and the product suite was the agency the entire time had been in the business. Like the entire time the agency had existed. And so it was like, do we really lean in, became the question, and just become a consulting based business, like truly just consulting and coaching and nothing else. And I said, listen, sit with the decision, because obviously this agency is your baby. It's where you started. And so why don't you sit with the decision? And if you feel like in a couple months this is something that you want to do, then do it. Because then at least you know when you made the decision that you didn't make a rash decision. It wasn't a reactive thing. And she's like, okay. So we ended up having a intensive and a VIP day, and we come back to the table about the agency. We're like, okay, are we keeping it or are we killing it? And so she's like, I'm killing it. And I'm like, okay. So we kill the agency. And that was the moment where she's like, I am going all in on the consulting, the coaching, and the education based side. I'm like, beautiful. And so as part of that lean in, one of the next stages became passive, which was really the introduction of how do we create this really intentional customer journey, because we have one-on-one, which is the highest ticket. We've got VIP days, which is our one-off experience. And then we have a mastermind, which is really, really a good suitable fit for people who want kind of like one to many. It's a 5-figure investment and you have a little bit of one-on-one, a little bit of group, best of both worlds. And so we're like, okay, what's the step before that? Because it's still in the mastermind. It was designed for someone who really already has a base level understanding of marketing. And so then became this gap that really presented itself, which was the fact that we don't really have anything to teach people the initial fundamentals of marketing before they get into scaling their marketing. So, hello, then comes the course. And so we end up introducing a passive offer of a course into their business model. And so really the structure now is entirely dialed in when it comes to their product suite. And, they've done immense work on the delivery behind the scenes, the structure of how they're delivering, the trainings, the resources, going multi-medium behind the scenes, which basically means that they have things that are both, typed copy, video, and audio for all different types of learning styles. And like they've really been dialing in all of the actual offering and product suites to really make this something that they have a great foundation to scale with. And so that really came down to, okay, well, the offering is dialed in now, right? Like we have all the bases covered. And at this point, they surpassed 7 figures because they hit the 7 figures very quickly. And after that, then it became, well, how do we just like rocket ship to the next level? But here was the thing that I wanted to say in the midst of this is that there was the aspect of the CEO. You've heard me mention the CEO a couple times in here. And the thing that I think is the biggest lesson, in my opinion, from this person's journey is actually the evolution of them equal to the evolution of the business. And, this CEO that I support is someone after my own heart, because a lot of what she's been through and a lot of what she's done is something that I very much see myself within. And what I mean by that is, I think she's very masculine type A, which, hello, if anybody knows me, you guys know how much of that I am and how natural that is flowing through my veins. But the thing that I really connect with her on is the fact of how similar the way in which we approach businesses. Now, the thing is, in the way we approach business, we get shit done. Okay. So, like, we are bulls with horns in business, right? Like, we are not messing around and we go hard when it comes to growth and expansion. The problem with that being that in the tendencies we have to go hard in business, we haven't always listened to what we need as much as we know what the business needs. And so it's been interesting, in mentoring her, because it's funny, the things that have happened in her journey are like 3 steps behind the evolution that I just had. And it's been kind of beautiful, actually, as a mentor, because I feel like, she really is someone I could, which is the intention of mentorship, take under my wing and to say, hey, if I could give you any advice, it'd be this, 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 this. And, one of the things that I think has allowed a lot of this evolution and change to happen, there's been big team changes, there's marketing changes, there's offer changes. It starts with the CEO. And you guys know that quote that I shared on earlier episodes, which I got from a mentor, by the way. This is not my quote, but he had shared with me, which is that you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it yet. And that was one of the things that she has constantly been focused on, which is how do I become who I need to be to run this business? And she doesn't believe at any moment that she's done. Like she's always open to change. And I want to share some of the things that, we discussed. When she came to me, she had wanted to really go to 5 million. She was like, I want to double my business every year. And I looked her straight dead in the eyes and I said, listen to me. If you want to do that, we can do that, but it's going to hurt because the amount of things you're talking about doing in the amount of time you're doing and wanting to achieve it, it's not that it's not possible, but it's not likely in connection to having a flow-based business or like a more sit on the beach, chill type business. This is a hustle season if you're talking about actually doing this. And I remember the conversation vividly. We sat in that room, in that intensive room, and she said, yeah, I want it. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Because I just had to be really, really frank with her. And I will be with any client, by the way. If someone says something to me that's a big, audacious goal, I'm like, listen, 100% let's go. But I want reality on the table here. I don't want this to be, oh, this is hard. This feels difficult. I'm like, if you want to blow up, i.e., like 3x your business in a year, I'm going to need some reality on the table here of the fact that's going to take a decent amount of hard work. Are you ready? And she's like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm like, okay, great. Let's go. So we get into this year. She hustles and she does exactly what she said she would, which she was like, pedal to the metal. And she put in that work. I have to give it to her. She is one of the hardest working women that I've seen in business. She does not stop when it comes to the things that she wants and the things that she knows are possible for herself and for her business. And so she puts in this work. And I remember at the end of the year of that year together, she said, Kate, like, I'm tired. I'm like, yeah, you should be tired. Like you did so much. You achieved a lot. You moved the needle a ton. And we revisit the conversation, which is why I do these intensives every 6 months, because it's a check-in with the CEO to say, like, where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at? And so we sat down and she says to me, Kate, I don't think I want to do it like this. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do it like? And she's like, I think I want more rest. Like I want more flow. I want more freedom. And most importantly, which is the biggest breakthrough, makes me want to cry a little bit. She says to me, even if it means that I have to grow a little bit slower, I'm willing to do it if I could take care of myself and if I can really focus on me. And she's like, I'm choosing me as much as I'm choosing the business. And that was huge, huge, because it really was her acknowledging that until that point, the business was like her North Star. And the reason it makes me emotional is because in that moment, it became very evident that she saw herself and her own journey and her life just as much of a North Star as she ever did the business. And what I mean by North Star is her identity. She saw originally, she was so gung ho about making this business big, 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 that it was a matter of like the business, the business, the business. And so it kind of consumed her. Right. And so having this conversation about, hey, like I choose me was beautiful because it was a matter of saying, yeah, you get to be somebody incredible. And if the business does 2 million or if it does 2.5 or 3, would you rather a $2 million business and be obsessed with your life? Or would you want a $3 million business and hate your life? And so the thing that I can tell you as a coach is that my job is to give people the space to have the breakthroughs they need to have. And when I have those hard conversations in our conference rooms that are intensives, it's me being almost like a parent to someone and saying, hey, if it was me, I will be honest, if you go left, this is your reality. You also can go right, and that will be your reality. What do you want to do? My job, similar to a parent, is I can guide someone, but I can't tell them and choose for them. It's their own journey. And I've been where she's been. I've made the decisions that she's made. I know what she went through because I myself went through it. But the thing is, she had to taste the hustle and the push and all of that. And again, she doesn't regret it at all. And nor do I, right? Because it's part of our journeys. But the thing is, we have to taste it to know that we don't want that. And so it really made her realize, I want to do this differently. And what's been really incredible, and this really goes back to, again, the time you give is the time that it will take. She was like, I'm going to focus on me and put these practices into place. And so she looked at really getting herself a good morning routine. She was working out every morning. She was journaling every morning. She was taking intentional space. She was meditating. She was reading. She was really developing as the CEO and the entrepreneur. And it reflected in the business. Like the business growth correlated with the growth that she was having personally. And, one of the mindsets we had talked about is I said, listen, if you want to have and you want to be, a big business, you have to treat your business like you're a pro athlete. You have to look at how you run the business is your time on the field. And guess what? Your time off the field needs to be spent just as intentionally in your rest, in your recharge, in your mindset, in your training. Like you're not just training when you're on Instagram or when you're in with your clients or when you're in with your team. You cannot be off. You have the other time though, which is where you're in off season, you're training and you're resting and you're healing and you're, still taking intentional time to be the person you need to be for when you're on the field, i.e. for when you're in your business. And so for her, she took that and she ran with it and she put those practices into place. And what's been really incredible is this year, she has still grown her business and had insane results and has been working a fraction of the amount of time that she has been before, has had more free space and more time to really be with herself, go on vacation, do things that allow her to actually disconnect and enjoy her business. And again, it comes back to, it's such a testament to the fact that your business will take up the time in which you give it. And so because she decided that she and her life and what she wanted was just as much, if not more important than the business results, i.e. the business milestone that she thought was important, she was like, yeah, I'm going to take this intentional space to go work out, to go to a class, to go see friends, to go socialize, to go do these things. And when she did, the business, guess what, is still scaling. And it was such a testament to the fact that, like, when you have the ability from a belief system to truly choose you, and I mean really choose you will be aggressive about your boundaries with the business. And in turn, it's going to allow you to discover new ways of doing business that maybe you hadn't previously known or hadn't previously executed. And so she was diving a lot into the personal development work, and she really started to actually train like an athlete. Like she really was thinking as much about her time off the field as she was on the field. And so, when we go into all of this, she then says, okay, well, like I also, one of the things that was kind of taking up some of that time was the marketing. And so I want to talk through a couple of things we did when it came to the marketing. The marketing when she first came to me was very micro, which was basically meaning that she was creating a lot of small pieces of content. She was probably creating, I would say, anywhere between 5 to 7 pieces of content for like all the major platforms a day. So like say stories, TikTok, Instagram, all those things. And so she was like, this is a lot of content. And I'm like, it is. And so we went to, okay, well, how can we be really intentional about with your time and what you're doing to create that much media? And so what we ended up doing is we ended up going into more of a repurposing model, which was where she took her podcast. She created and launched a podcast during our time together. And with that podcast, looked to repurpose that to create clips basically that could go onto YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all of the things. And so that basically became a complement and another way to get additional visibility for the business that didn't require her to be connected to her phone all day, every day on these platforms. And I want to tell you one of the things that I do also think that I really have to give her kudos to, and it's such a testament to growth, is the aspect of consistency. Oh my goodness, is this entrepreneur consistent? I will give her that. If you had a calendar, I don't think she misses a day. I don't think I've seen her miss a day, like sick or not. She's like pulling from an archive or she's repurposing from somewhere. And it's such a testament to the fact of like what happens when you consistently, without fail, show up in your business. And the consistency was massive because she was like, I have to be consistent. So she doesn't start anything unless she's going to be consistent at it. Stories, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. And so when we put out the podcast, it was the same way. We had to consistently hit every single week on those wickets of episodes because people were going to tune into them. But the interesting thing that ended up shifting, so the sales are kind of going, they're all going up. And then there became this phase where we were like, this is so interesting. There was kind of like a shift in, the way that people were responding. We were like, okay, like what is this? One of the things that I will tell you, it has been the biggest piece of her business is her understanding of buyer types. Because the way that she quickly responds to buyer types and marketing data is pretty profound. Because in a moment where anything happens, she's very data driven. And when anything would happen in the business, she would instantly say, okay, like what does the data tell us? And what's the assessment? And what's the action associated? And so we would see, for example, that her audience used to be a ton of driver buyers, which were people that were just kind of like quick to take action, all about the outcome, get the results, like very destination, get to the place driven. And so what we started to see is when she put out the marketing that this was changing. That messaging wasn't hitting home for people anymore. And it was kind of like, that's interesting. Tell me how we then switch to more emotional based language and everything again completely takes back off. The messages start coming in, the sales start rolling right back where they were. And we're like, okay. And that's because of her quick response to understanding of buyer psychology around the sales process as well as the marketing. And so to wrap us up here, I really want to kind of talk about a little bit of the takeaways of what I want to share with this. One thing that I really admire about this client is the ability for her to pivot in her perspective and also in her pathway and her execution. Because when she came to me, I can literally pull up her blueprint right now because we have these docs where we document all this. The blueprint that she came to me with is not the same blueprint she has today. And that's because she's somebody who takes the data of anything in the business, of the team, with when we talked about compensation, of, the brand, of the marketing, of the offers, she takes the data and she looks at that and she makes decisions and she acts fast, which is why she's been able to create the results that she's had. And most importantly, which I really admire, is she doesn't get in this mindset of, but we said we were going to do blank, but I thought it was going to look like this. She doesn't play the victim ever. It's always the mindset of, okay, like what's the opportunity? What's the next stage? What's the lesson? Let's move, 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 move. Like she's really somebody who takes it all in her stride and really takes action very quickly, which I think is part of the reason she's been able to go from 100K to 280K, right, per month. And so when we talk about going from 100 to 280K, another big part of that is the fact that she developed into becoming the business owner and the CEO that she needed to be, because she, in elevating herself as a CEO and as the owner and the leader of the company, also created space for her company to grow, which is exactly what it did. And that was because her perspective and her mindset changed, her habits changed, her emotional regulation changed in the sense of when something would happen, what used to maybe rattle her is kind of like, okay, like, what do I want to do about it now? She's very calm around, things that come up in the business now, which again, things come up in every business. And so, also her perspective in developing how she is as a person was such a testament to the type of results that she's had, because she changed who she was, which changed the type of business she created, because her beliefs were determining her actions and those actions were creating the results she had. So by changing her belief system, she changed the actions associated and she changed the results that she's now seeing. And I think it's a massive takeaway from our time together. I've just seen her completely flourish into a totally different entrepreneur. It's been absolutely incredible. And the thing that I would also say is she is somebody who really, for me, is such a testament to the response to resistance. Because resistance happens, right? Like every business experiences resistance, experiences moments where they feel like, is this the thing? Is this working? Is this the right move? She's gone through personal seasons, she's gone through professional seasons, and she has come out the other side even better for it. And so it's such a testament too to the fact of she really embodies, you guys know I always say, the obstacle is the opportunity. She has taken every quote unquote obstacle and made it an opportunity for herself to develop and to change as a business owner and to develop the way in which she does business and also the way that she operates as a person, right, in her personal life. And the other thing that I will also say, which I think is a big piece here, is I have to give her credit for the fact that she's so consistent and she doesn't have this aspect of shiny object syndrome. Like very rarely is she like, I see people doing this. I see people doing this. Like she so trusts her own vision. She so trusts her where she's going, where she sees the company going, what she sees is possible for it, and trusts in her gut that that's the right way to move. And she asks really thoughtful questions. She's been in mentorship for a little while with me now. She's been a longstanding client. And I can tell you the level of the questions she asks is part of why she's able to get the answer she gets and why that's able to help her to get the outcomes that she gets as well. And so, if I was to say the takeaway of this client, right? So again, going back to the high level of what she was able to do, she's a multi-million-dollar company by the age of 25. She had started the year at 100K per month and ended that year at 280K per month, and also has an incredible team of women behind her, building communities on multiple different platforms that are all super highly engaged, and basically has sold out every single thing that she's ever launched. And so, why is that? She really has embodied all the key essence of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And I think that the thing I want to, really echo from today's episode is this is not in the absence of resistance. This is still in the reality and in the situation of resistance occurring. And I think that that's what makes it really beautiful. I think it's really easy to say, oh, this person crushed when they had everything handed to them, or they crushed in the easiest season of business. She's been in this for a while. And she's been in every department from agency to consulting to passive and all of the things. She's had big team, lean team. She's had, different channels that she's been part of. She's been, stretched as an entrepreneur in her perspective and her mindset habits. And all of this compounds to get her to become the person that she is today, and therefore to generate the business that she has today. And it's something that you also have the ability to do. The reason I wanted to cover today's story and today's case study is because for her to come in at around 30K a month and now be at a place where she's doing 280 a month, it really is the proof that it is possible, most importantly, for you. And the reason I love these episodes is because I don't just want to cover the highlights. I want to cover the areas where the person really dove into making change. And I cover that intentionally because I think it's very easy for us to see other people in the online world, other people in the business space in general, who are crushing it and think like that can't happen for me. And please listen as I say this to you. You are no different than any case study or social proof or myself and anything that you've seen on the internet. All of those who you may think are lucky or that you admire have had something that they've done or become that has allowed them to generate the results that they have. And so here's my recommendation to you. Here's my ask of you. If there's somebody that you admire, whoever that is, in any bucket, it doesn't have to even be business. It could be a relationship you admire. It could be a person who has the health you admire. Take a second and do yourself a favor and go up to that person and say, hey, if you could give me one piece of advice, who do I need to become to have the business, health, relationship that you have? And ask the questions not of what they did, but who they had to become. Because you'll see a very consistent theme across each of these case study episodes, which is the fact that each of the people that we discuss transformed in the way they operated and thought and their mindset. And of course, we cover the strategy of what we did, but all that part, guys, is really easy. Like, I can fix your strategy very quickly. The thing that allows that strategy, though, to really have success and really take flight is the entrepreneur and the CEO at it. Because frankly, the best tool and the biggest risk to any business is the owner. It is you. It's you who runs the business. You're the biggest asset, and you also can be the biggest risk to your business. And so please let this be your sign that you have the ability to achieve the exact results I'm talking about. You may very well be a case study I talk about 2 years from now. Who knows? But the thing that I can tell you is that's not possible unless you start asking the hard-hitting questions. And I don't care what stage you're at. If you're at day 1, ask someone who's at a 10K month. If you're at 10K month, ask somebody who's at 50. I ask people all the time. I literally talked to somebody the other day who has like a $9 million business. I'm like, hey, when you were at this stage and you went for this stage and then you had this thing you were doing and you went to here, who'd you need to become? What broke in you to allow you to really get there? And the thing that came up from the answer had nothing to do with business, actually. It had everything to do with their perspective around positivity versus negativity and seeking opportunity. And so the benefit of the online world, as I see it, is the fact that we have the ability to message these people with as quick of a DM just to say, hey, who do you need to become to do blank? And so here's my challenge to you. Let's make this fun. In listening today, I want you to think about your goal. I want you to think about what you're working toward. And I want you to ask me, who did you need to become to do blank? You can slide into my DMs and I will send you a voice note of my honest advice of whatever stage you're at in business. You can say, "Hey Kate, I listened to the podcast." You can give me that cue so I know you've listened to it so you know the context. And I'm happy to send you any open thoughts just to give you my honest advice. If I was to say, "Hey, if I could mentor you, here's what I would say to you." Or slide into the DMs of somebody that you really admire and say, "Hey, I've been watching you from afar. I've been watching your stuff. I think it's incredible. And I'm wondering if I could ask a quick question." And go ahead and shoot your shot because you never know unless you ask. And the insight of the person who's already been where you want to go is just completely, immensely invaluable when it comes to being able to catapult your results. So I hope today was helpful for you guys. Of course, as always, I tell you, I always love to hear from you guys just to see, what really resonated with you. Was there a big takeaway maybe from today's episode that really hit home with you? And just, always love to connect with you guys on Instagram. So Kate Perkovic on Instagram, slide into my DMs. Feel free to share any insights and takeaways that you guys had. I always love to connect with you in there. And of course, if I can provide any insight for you on helping you to be able to, grow and get to the next level and just chit chat with you in the DMs, give you advice, I'm always happy to. So with that being said, my friends, I will see you guys on the next episode. And as always, stay ambitious.